Air raid sirens go off as Russian planes mistakenly bomb Russian cities. Southern Command spokesman Natalia Humanyuk said air raid sirens were sounded along the length from Russia's Astrakhan region to the Crimean Peninsula temporarily occupied by Russia when Russian giant bombers launched 3 fires. See off. All 3 were targeted at Ukrainian cities but rushed towards Russian cities. Will Stewart and Tariq Tahir of The Sun, based in London, have a report titled "Failure to Launch 3 Russian Missiles Launched from Putin's Nuke Bombers Fail to Hit Ukraine Falling into Sea in Latest Humiliation." Fails to launch, 3 Russian missiles launched from Putin's nuclear bombers failed to hit Ukraine but fell into the sea in the latest humiliation. The report showed that missiles fired at Ukraine from a Russian nuclear bomber had fallen into the sea. These terrifying rockets missed the apartment buildings by a few inches. New humiliation to Vladimir Putin's military comes after a jet fighter accidentally dropped a bomb on a Russian city. In the latest mistake, 3 newly built missiles launched from 2 95 strategic bombers aimed at Ukraine plunged into the Caspian Sea after malfunctioning. Crimean Wind Telegram reported on the disaster, citing a Russian military source. Luckily they dived right away, the source of the General Staff said. They can fly a little farther and crash into residential buildings, killing a lot of people. If we don't figure out what caused the rocket to crash, then such a tragedy is only a matter of time. The Russians have regularly fired cruise missiles into Ukraine from over the Caspian Sea after their invasion. The source said that the reason for the failure of these missiles could be due to Western sanctions, forcing weapons manufacturers to use poor quality components. The 2 95 and 2 160 supersonic bombers are the mainstay of Russia's long-range aviation force. Yuri Ianat, a spokesman for the Ukrainian Air Force, recently claimed Russia is firing missiles from the Caspian Sea because they are unreliable. Why were they allowed to launch from the Caspian Sea? Dear, because a missile fired from a bomber does not always work and reach its target. It may just fall. When it fell into the Caspian Sea, it was easier somewhere in Russia, on top of the Russians. Falling into the sea means that the Russians can hide their mistakes. This incident happened after a Russian Su-34 fighter jet dropped a bomb on the city of Belgorod, just 40 kilometers from the Ukrainian border, creating a crater 21 meters deep, with a radius of 20 meters. Impressive video captures the moment the explosion tore through the street, sending everything on the pavement tens of meters into the air. Images show a nearby house that was destroyed in the blast, leaving debris scattered across the scene. A car was also knocked up by the bombing, landing on the roof of a nearby shop. Eyewitnesses said they heard a screech before the deafening explosion. The bomb is believed to be a 500 kilograms air-dropped bomb designed by the Soviet Union, and modernized with a high-explosive warhead. The Su-34, which has undergone decades of development, is praised by Russia for its supposedly advanced technology. But the Air Force faced ridicule when pilots had to rely on store-bought Garmin satellite navigation devices and stick them to dashboards to find their way around. 2. Russia accused Ukraine of cross-border attack on Tuesday. A Russian official on Tuesday said Ukrainian forces shelled the border town of Kharkivichi overnight. This is the 3rd time in 3 days in a row he has accused Ukraine of attacking the Bryansk region in southwestern Russia. Bryansk Governor Alexander Bogomaz, who leads the region that shares borders to the south with Ukraine and to the west with Belarus, made the latest allegation in a televised post, adding that there were no casualties. The statement comes after he announced on Monday that a homemade mine had exploded along the Bryansk-Oneka railway line, which borders Ukraine, causing a freight train to derail. Video taken at the scene of the railway explosion showed dozens of destroyed and burned train carriages smoldering as emergency crews put out several fires. He said there were no casualties in that incident. On Sunday, the governor said Ukrainian shelling had killed 4 civilians after the attacks hit residential buildings in the village of Sezemka, in the Sezemsky district. In all of these cases, Bogomaz did not provide any evidence and CNN was unable to independently verify his claims. Ukraine has not commented on the alleged incidents. 3. Slovenia secretly delivered weapons to Ukraine. The media revealed again. New Jersey-based Forbes journalist David Axe has a report titled "Ukraine got a secret shipment of 6-wheel armored vehicles, then Slovenian media found out," which means Ukraine has a shipment secret six-wheeled armored vehicle, then the Slovenian media found out. 6 months after giving Ukraine all 28 super-upgraded T-55 tanks, Slovenia secretly donated 20 more armored fighting vehicles to Kiev. The delivery of the six-wheel, 14-ton Veluk AFVs, the Austrian variant of the Pandur, may have gone unnoticed, but Slovenian news agency 24UR is clearly aware. We have not received official confirmation of the Slovenian donation and probably won't for some time, but our sources have confirmed to us that the shipment to Ukraine is complete. This week in complete secrecy, 24UR reported on Tuesday. These Veluks are very interesting. Thinly armored and lightly armed compared to one of the 25-ton M2 infantry fighting vehicles Ukraine received from the United States, they nonetheless come from a popular line of armored vehicles. Those who have operated these armored vehicles, including U.S. Special Operations Command, appreciate them for their lightness, compactness, and simplicity. For such aircraft can be stowed on a C-17 transport aircraft. Pandur's armor protects from heavy machine gun fire and shell fragments. We don't know what Ukraine can do with these 20 new Veluks. But if they follow the instructions of the Pentagon, Ukrainian officials could hand them over to Special Operations Forces. Ukrainian commandos can benefit from armored vehicle upgrades. Many Pandur users, including Slovenia, say the vehicle can carry 10 men of infantry units, which can reach speeds of 62 miles or 100 kilometers an hour. On the other hand, U.S. Special Operations Command gave about 24 Pandurs to Delta Force. The impetus seems to have been the disastrous 1993 Battle of Mogadishu, in which the United States Delta Force comprised of pilots, rangers, and commanders, was caught up in a brutal urban skirmish without enough armored vehicles to support. We rarely see Pandas in action. Reporters discovered them in Iraq in 2003 and Syria 14 years later. In 2019, the United States purchased an alternative vehicle with a remote-controlled weapon station. The Pandur's top-mounted machine gun, grenade launcher or anti-tank rocket launcher is manually operated by a crew member poking his head out of the hood. In any case, a Pandur offers more firepower and protection than the vehicles commonly used by Ukrainian commandos such as the US-made Humvee and the Polish Oncilla armored truck. We won't know what Ukraine plans to do with its Veluks until someone posts photos or videos of these six-wheeled armored vehicles in action. What is arguably more interesting is the secrecy surrounding Slovenia's car donation. Given that Slovenia has secretly donated Veluks, one wonders what other weapons Ukraine's allies have donated to the war effort that the public isn't aware of. 4. Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu blames the arms and ammunition industry. Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu says his country is dealing heavy blows to Ukraine on all fronts, but supplying weapons is crucial to ensuring the success of what Moscow calls special military operation. In a meeting with top Russian military officials, Shoigu said Russian forces are engaged in combat operations along the entire line and are fighting not only with Ukraine but also with unprecedented military support from the West. He said Russia had successfully attacked Ukraine's Western-supplied weapons depots without presenting any evidence. Shoigu said Moscow has taken steps to increase weapons production to support the war, adding that the success of Russian forces on the battlefield will largely depend on the timely replenishment of weapons, time, and other military equipment. The country's leadership has assigned defense enterprises the task of increasing the speed and volume of production in a short time, Shoigu emphasized. Shoigu said the military may have all the ammunition it needs to use on the battlefield this year, but called on a major missile manufacturer to urgently double production of high-precision missiles. 5. Ukrainian, Polish commanders discuss security in northern Ukraine. Lieutenant General Serhiy Naiv, commander of the Ukrainian Joint Forces, and Lieutenant General Tomasz Piotrowski, operations commander of the Polish Armed Forces, discussed the security situation in the northern regions of Ukraine and agreed on exchange of additional information. Lieutenant General Naiv said the above via video conference during a press conference at the Kyiv Press Center on the afternoon of Tuesday, May 2. According to Naiv, he informed his Polish colleagues about the implementation and strengthening of measures to ensure the defense capabilities of the border areas and to respond immediately to hostile actions, possible, while also thanking the leadership of the Polish Armed Forces for their consistent cooperation and long-term partnership. In contrast, Piotrowski said that Poland will continue to support and assist Ukraine in resisting a full-scale Russian invasion. Naive added that both sides also agreed to continue dialogue and positive interaction. 6. Exhausted Russian paratroopers in the city of Bakhmut. The dream of capturing this city before May 9 is unlikely to come true. During a press conference at the Kyiv Press Center on the afternoon of Tuesday, May 2, Ukrainian Defense Ministry spokesman Brigadier General Alexei Hromov said that the Russian forces are concentrating a number of their best forces to capture for the city of Bakhmut after 9 months of fighting. They seemed in a hurry to capture the city by May 9, their Nazi Victory Day. However, according to Brigadier General Alexei Hromov, while Ukrainian troops were still able to replace troops, Russian regulars and Wagner troops were stuck in the city, tired, exhausted and beginning to lack supplies due to supply lines. Theirs was constantly bombarded by artillery and Ukrainian Air Force. In the previous press conference, Colonel Serhiy Cherevadyi, spokesman of the Eastern Military Command of Ukraine, said, in the direction of Bakhmut, Russia deployed 25,600 troops, 65 tanks, 450 armored vehicles, 154 weights artillery, 56 multiple launch rocket systems against us. With such a large number of troops they could not advance much. He explains that the front lines are constantly changing. Sometimes the enemy gets some success after a powerful artillery attack and destroys infrastructure, and they can move forward. But we counterattack and often regain our position after firing on the enemy. In the past 24 hours, the Ukrainian Air Force launched 7 attacks on troop concentration groups, destroying 3 air defense systems. Meanwhile, Ukrainian infantry units repelled 41 attacks in the directions of Lyman, Bakhmut, Avdiivka and Mariinka. As a result, 460 Russian soldiers were eliminated from the battle along with 1 tank, 1 armored vehicle, 9 artillery systems, 3 air defense systems, and 6 troop and fuel transport vehicles. Overall, from February 24, 2022 to May 2, 191,420 Russian invaders were eliminated from the battle. Total enemy combat losses also included 3,701 tanks, 7,193 armored vehicles, 2,930 artillery systems, 544 mass-launched missile systems, 298 air defense systems, 308 aircraft, 294 helicopters, 2,477 drones, 947 cruise missiles, 18 warships, 5,851 troop and fuel transport vehicles, and 360 special equipment units. According to a report by Ukrinform, the Ukrainian Air Force destroyed 3 Russian air defense missile systems and attacked 7 enemy clusters in the past day. 7. Russian troops shelled the northern border and Kherson area. During a press conference at the Kyiv Press Center on the afternoon of Tuesday, May 3, the spokesman for the Ukrainian National Police, Captain Alyona Lyatnitska, said that Russian troops had fired mortars into the territory of the Novoslobidska community. While at Shalihinska, the invaders shelled with cannon. Luckily, there were no casualties. During the shelling of the village of Petropavlivka, near Ukraine's border with Russia, which took place on the morning of Tuesday, May 2, a 73-year-old woman was hit by shrapnel. Doctors are now providing the victim with all the help she needs. She said sadly that in the Kherson area 3 people were killed in the shelling of the invaders. 8. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky encourages soldiers and compatriots. In his address to the nation on Tuesday, May 2, President Zelensky said, "Our state has proven that it can be won. We have proven that we can free our land from invaders. All the guarantors of the liberation of the country have proven that, with the green and yellow flags, normal life will return to every person, every family. Our goal is to return this life to the whole of Ukraine, to all those areas that are still under temporary aggression." 9. Putin threatens to pay dividends to shareholders from countries unfriendly to Russia. On Tuesday, Putin ordered his government to clarify the procedure for how Russian companies can pay dividends to shareholders living in what he called unfriendly countries. Benevolent. Russia considers all countries that have imposed sanctions on its military campaign in Ukraine unfriendly. It responded with a package of sanctions and self-imposed capital controls, limiting the ability of companies and investors from these countries to repatriate profits. Reuters reports the Kremlin said proposals for dividend payments to shareholders should include conditions that force them to expand production in Russia, develop businesses based on new technologies, and invest in Russian economy. Putin has asked the government to come up with proposals by May 20. 10. Future generations of Russians must pay the price for Putin's invasion of Ukraine. Andriy Yermak, head of the Office of the President of Ukraine, said that generations of Russians will pay the price for the country's actions during the war, citing damage to Ukraine's territory and environment. And other factors. When we talk about the environmental damage that Russia continuously causes due to attacks on Ukraine, we have to make it clear to the Russians, they will pay for everything. They pay a price for their landmines, murders, and child abductions. The unborn future generations will pay the price, and they will have no other choice. Moreover, these generations will face a serious problem, because they will go down in history as descendants of Russian terrorists who committed genocide of the Ukrainian people. And it will not be possible to hide this in any country in the world. 11. Russia changes its rhetoric on missile attacks against Ukraine. The Russian Ministry of Defense has changed its tune and is actively describing offensive operations before a Ukrainian counterattack. The American Institute for the Study of War, or ISW for short, said the above. The Russian Ministry of Defense has recently changed its rhetoric and is actively describing offensive operations, in order to show a proactive approach to growing concerns, said ISW analysts. In the Russian information space about a Ukrainian counterattack. Russian forces launched another large-scale missile attack on Ukraine on the night of April 30 to the morning of May 1. Ukrainian sources report that 9 Tu-95 strategic bombers and 2 Tu-160 strategic bombers took off from Murmansk Oblast and near the Caspian Sea and launched 18 Kh-101 and Kh-555 enters Ukraine. The Ukrainian air defenses shot down 15 missiles. Geolocated footage from Pavlorad, in the Dnipro area, shows one of the rockets that hit the Pavlorad chemical plant and caused a massive explosion on impact. However, the Russian Defense Ministry announced on May 1 that the attacks targeted Ukraine's military-industrial facilities and successfully disrupted the production of military resources. Russian bloggers claimed that the missile hit Ukrainian air defense systems and a transport hub in Pavlorad. Ukrainian Air Force spokesman Yuri Ihnat noted that the fact that both the Tu-95 and Tu-160 carry far fewer missiles than their maximum payload indicates that Russia continues to face difficulties in the production of missiles. Produce a sufficient number of such weapons. 12. Russian ammunition shortage deepens rift with Wagner Corporation. Newsweek ran a report titled Russia's Lack of Ammo Deepening Rift with Wagner Group, UK, which means, UK says, Russian ammunition shortage deepens rift with Wagner Group. The UK Ministry of Defense said that Moscow's apparent lack of ammunition for the ongoing war in Ukraine was deepening the rift between the Russian paramilitary force, the Wagner Group, and the country's Ministry of Defense. Ammunition shortages cause internal divisions, most notably between the Russian Ministry of Defense and the Wagner Group, the British Defense Ministry's intelligence service said on Tuesday as part of a new intelligence update about the ongoing war in Ukraine. The UK's latest assessment comes after Wagner Group founder and oligarch Yevgeny Prigozhin repeatedly called for an increase in ammunition supplies. On Saturday, Prigozhin, an ally of Russian President Vladimir Putin, threatened to withdraw his fighters from the eastern Ukrainian city of Bakhmut if the Russian Defense Ministry did not provide more supplies immediately, i.e. Until recently, the Wagner Group led an attack in Bakhmut. Prigozhin's warriors are said to have been gradually replaced by regulars in the city. Prigozhin has been asking the Russian Defense Ministry for more ammunition for weeks, as Moscow seeks its first major victory on the battlefield since the summer of 2022 by capturing Bakhmut, an industrial city small with a pre-war population of about 70,000. The fight for Bakhmut has become the longest-running war since Putin launched an all-out invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. The UK Ministry of Defense said that Russia continues to give the highest priority to mobilizing its defense industry, but it still does not meet the needs of wartime. While Russia's political leaders insist on success on the battlefield, Russia's logistics experts are caught in the middle. Referring to social media reports linked to the Moscow military, the British Ministry of Defense Intelligence said it had announced that the Russian Deputy Defense Minister, General Mikhail Mizantsev, had been dismissed. Mizantsev holds the military logistics portfolio and has only been in this position for 8 months. Although his dismissal was only recently confirmed, the UK Ministry of Defence said speculation about his future highlights the logistical issues that remain at the heart of Russia's struggling campaign in Ukraine. Russia does not have enough ammunition to achieve success in attacks. Prigozhin has previously accused the Russian government of lying about supplying the Wagner Corporation with all necessary weapons. Prigozhin released several clips alleging that the ministry did not provide his team with the weapons needed during the Bakhmut attack. On April 11, Prigozhin claimed his forces controlled more than 80% of Bakhmut. Newsweek has reached out to the Russian Defense Ministry for comment via email.